It's the Dev Friday Show with Mark and Tim.
Oh, let's see. There's lots of stuff. Mark was here early, and we had a chance just to, not to plan anything, but we talked about a couple of things. I don't know that they'll come up. Today, we'll talk about this later. Today is the day that I mute the general channel in Slack. So that's, and maybe we'll talk about that. But you know what I just noticed? Again, if you're listening to this the best way to listen to this podcast is to listen to the podcast. But if you're watching the live stream, I just noticed the little bumper video that we have that comes up still says Mark and Tim talk about starting a pod. Do you think we've done it, Mark? Do you think we've started a podcast yet? This is what, episode 60?
So I don't think until we get to that episode 100 we can call ourselves professional podcasters.
Okay, 100.
But I think after 50 episodes, I think we're starting to get the hang of this.
So we're 40 away from hitting that milestone marker of 100. At 100, are you going to check our stats?
At that point, then maybe that's what we should do. Our
100th episode.
It's not annual show. It's the what's the term for that? Your 100.
When you hit it, I don't know, at the 100th show.
Your centennial. The centennial show.
That's more about time, but is that really what we call it? Centennial? I don't know. Maybe. All right. So the 100 show.
But once we get about it, that would actually be something good to do on the show, is to kind of let's take a look back at the stats over the past 100 shows and see how well they have evolved and they have grown, or how minimal they have grown.
You want to see like the listenership, like episode 1, we had 5 people.
Yes.
Episode 2, we had 4 people. Episode 100, we had
2 people.
1 person. Should we do it live on the 100th show?
I think so. I think
that could be either
this summer. I will take a peek at the analytics. And if they do blow me away, then I may have to do a little bit early. But I don't expect.
What if they don't blow you away? What if they are absolutely depressed?
Well, my expectations are set so low. I think we should be good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is fun either way. Whether people are listening to us or not, this is just the time for us to sit back and chat. And the topic of today is I was talking. I played it before we went live. There's a YouTube video. It's not a YouTube video. It's from an old Seinfeld episode, right, where George is very excited about all that he's going to do in his summer, and Mark said I just had to be careful about not playing too much of that, or are they going to demonetize us, or would they just take it down? Would we get the DCMI? Is that the thing that we get?
They will totally take down our YouTube channel, and
yeah.
Now YouTube, they probably won't care. I'm sorry, Twitter, they probably won't care at all.
Twitter won't care. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Copyright, whatever. But anyway, so George says that it's going to be Summer of George. But that's the topic of I think of today's podcast, since Mark kind of teased that last week. Not that we normally have a plan, but you said you wanted to talk about your plan for the summer.
Have a couple things in mind to talk about. One is a more professional topic, and the other one is more of a technical topic. So we can see where we'll get to today.
But are either one the plan for your summer?
Because I did want to get. I thought it would be interesting to get your feedback on it. Because that's what I use the show for, is basically to beta test my ideas with you.
Yeah, I get it.
Or to work through them.
Because what Mark saw is he saw my hourly consulting rate, and he's but if I ask him to do a podcast, I talk to him for an hour for free. This will add up.
Hey,
anyway,
that's how you play the game.
Anyway, yeah, I saw you rebranded yourself on LinkedIn.
I did. Wait, at what point? I've been rebranding myself a lot on LinkedIn, trying to figure out what would be the right one.
I just noticed it. I just saw that things changed on LinkedIn. I don't know how many times this rebrand has happened.
I did. Yes, I did update my profile photograph.
New picture.
And then a banner image, trying to look all professional, trying to elevate my
copy in the banner image too.
Yes,
it has your name there.
Yes.
And you're a solutions architect and educator.
Yeah, so we could talk about that, kind of think about different roles, because we've been going back and forth about what would be the right role for me, Tim, as I'm trying to make this transition from academia back into the real world, to get back to coding and working with companies, and where I spent most of my time with before teaching. But let me also, before we get into that, let me just preference, because there probably will be either coworkers or previous coworkers listening to this, I kind of think about, kind of what is my perspective and what am, what are my plans for the
Well,
summer,
oh
and
yeah,
also
like I feel like we're
into
breaking information here or something like
going into
that.
the fall. Well, I did want to say though, is that right now I am still scheduled to teach in the fall. That's my plan. I'm still, I haven't resigned. I haven't left my job. I love teaching. I've talked about that many, many times in the show, how, teaching is one of the jobs where I feel like I kind of fell into it, but at the same time, though, I kind of felt like I always was kind of moving towards it because it's the
What?
type of job that I can do without even thinking, in a sense. Sort of like talking to you, Tim.
Well,
I could meet on
so
Friday. And
yeah,
I could
remind me
come.
though.
I could teach a class and enjoy it and be able to kind of. It
What
doesn't feel like work.
what got you into that again? Remind me, like what? Because your wife was a teacher,
Hmm.
and then was it you just there was an opportunity to do
Well, if you
some?
want to go real back,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you know a little bit about my background, is that I am a son of a minister.
This is okay. All right, buckle up. We're going way back, way
So
back.
kind of being around like churches, sermons, pastors, that's kind of always kind of been in my background. When I went to college, I was initially going for computer science. I actually spent 2 years studying computer science. And then at the college I was at, the math and the physics at the time was a bit challenging. I got into the let's say the pass after my second semester of physics and calculus. So it
You
got
need
to
a
be
lot of physics for computer science.
got to be a little bit challenging. So I was kind of debating, and it kind of actually at the time it kind of made me not want to program, not want to be, because it kind of almost like sucked the fun out of it.
That's really
Uh,
interesting because it's so theoretical and there's so much. Well, this is the right way, and you need to
I
understand all
just
this.
yeah, for me personally, I think at the time and where I was at, because I was a stupid kid, I just wasn't prepared enough to kind of to really really kind of work through learning, those, learning math and physics and trying to kind of build that into my repertoire. I go back to it now. I love learning about, I actually, just for fun, I study linear algebra and getting back
Just
to learning things about calculus that I forgot from my
just for
college
fun.
years, just for fun. So now actually I like to learn that. And actually, but back when I was in college, when I was a stupid college student, it was very, very challenging. So that's why when I see the college students today, I'm very empathetic for what they're coming out of high school, going into college. For me, I actually look back at it, I probably should have gone to community college myself. Like the first year to 2 years, I should have actually just spent some time in community college and kind of worked through my personal issues when it came from an academic standpoint. But what I did was, once I wanted to kind of
Because
change.
you see community colleges as a good stepping stone to say do 2 years there and then maybe pursue a 4 year at a university,
Or it could just be 2 years that could
or
help
just
you
2 years and that's enough.
just
Yeah,
get a job, right? Because in
yeah.
the end, especially our industry, is a degree required to be a developer or a designer?
I
No, not
hope not.
necessarily. It's your skills and what you can work on, right? So your portfolio or your list of projects, or what you can do.
Your
That's
LinkedIn
really
header image.
That's true. Well, that's when you get to be my old age of over 40. You have to start selling yourselves in more visual ways to make yourself
Oh, you
look
know
good.
what? Speaking of over 40, tomorrow I will be over 40.
Oh, it's your birthday tomorrow.
Yeah,
Look
I
at
will
you.
get.
You're
I've been
crossing the threshold.
Well, I mean, I'll be 41, so I guess that's like I could just
Oh,
say
you
I
already did.
am
Okay.
40, right? I am 40 now, but now I'm going to be over 40, and that is, of course, why I'm going to mute General today, because everybodying to be happy birthdaying
Oh,
me,
there you
and
go.
I'll just come back. I'll surface tomorrow and say
Well, I can give
say
you a
thank
little
you to everybody.
pre-happy birthday here.
So
So
there you go. So
and you actually acknowledge and
I do. I don't hide it
and
like other
announce your
people.
birthday. Well, once you get over 40, I kind of feel like when my birthday rolls around, I'm like, just another year. It's just I'm just getting older.
So that's what I'm coasting into then. So it's like, it's just another. And again, I'll be at a graduation, because having a birthday this early in June,
Mhm.
it is not uncommon for my birthday to coincide with a high school or a college graduation that I have to be at or happen to be at.
Okay.
So that happened many times in my childhood, and I think it'll be fun tomorrow to kind of relive that a little bit while we go to a graduation for some.
So
fun
getting
for my
back to
kids.
I'm trying
But yes,
to give this
yes.
background here.
Or the background, right? So how you became a teacher so far?
I switched gears in college, because like I
Yeah.
said, I was at a point where I didn't even know if I really wanted to be a programmer. I was kind of like, I got into college, and I love programming in high school.
This is
And
the
then
DNA of the podcast, though. I have to say this. My dad went to college, and he was going to be an electrical engineer.
Mhm.
And the thing that annoyed him was you couldn't see it. right? Like you couldn't see what was going on. And every time they try to convey some principle of from an engineering standpoint, if you've studied electronics, all right, we're gonna pretend it's a pipe with water, right? Like it's not a perfect analogy, but pretend it's a pipe with water. Think of this as a gate. I mean, we call it a gate. When we're talking about logic gates and things like that, we call it a gate. We think of it in like that those physical terms. So he just dropped out. He stopped going to college for electrical engineering, and he went for mechanical engineering. He's like, I might as well learn that stuff because that's kind of what you're telling me I have to think of this like. So he just switched. He's like, don't like this. Don't think I'm going to be an electrical engineer. So he became a mechanical engineer who then eventually worked for a power company. But yeah. So you're sitting there going, I don't even know if I want to be a developer.
So yeah, it was a tough kind of that mid, like going into my junior year, which I could, I got all my general ed credits taken care of, and I just had to work my my major courses. And so I decided to go back to the family business, Tim. And I was going to go into, switch majors to like religious studies, and then was going to think about going to seminary. So I was on that track, and I was going to do that. And then by the end of my 2 years, kind of flipped the switch again. We're kind of like, I don't know if I want to be a full-time minister. And I kind of second guessed that. So I was kind of not second guessing, but just about seminary. Definitely didn't want to go to 4 more years, go to seminary. That's what my dad did. And so I was on track to do that. And once it got to the point of actually starting to apply to seminaries, I was like, okay, I don't know if this is, because what I did like about going back to what brought me into teaching, the one thing I really loved about, studying religious studies, also studying how to, study the Bible and how to prepare sermons and how to, just to
good old
learn how to be a
there,
teacher within a church setting.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. That was one of my favorite things about it. Like I loved, preparing sermons and talking about that and speaking at churches. That was one of my most favorite things to do those 2 years after I kind of switched programs.
Gotcha.
So that kind of led me into the desire of, okay, I like speaking. I love talking to people. I love the process of teaching. So that was something that was kind of like stuck with me. Think about it from a technical standpoint, though, looking back at my college years, my first 2 years, I still think about what I learned in those first 2 years. Like I learned, Turbo Pascal. I learned functional procedural programming. I learned a little bit about assembly, a little bit about databases, right? So I learned a lot of the core concepts that we apply today. I did learn those first 2 years. And I always think back at that experience. And that was a really, really valuable experience, because what happened to me then, once I finished up my 4 years of college, what do you think my first job was?
Programmer.
I went back to that, and I became a database programmer for a tax company.
There you go.
And I only got that based on before college, I did a lot of, working with JavaScript and HTML, built a lot of web pages before going to college, and also played with making screensavers with Visual Basic and Turbo Pascal. And so I kind of I liked the
little bouncing lines.
Yeah, the little experiments and also starting to do a little bit of side work for small little projects, mostly for free for other people before I got into college through high school.
And when you say database programmer, like when we in the web development world, we think of that as like a DBA. You're sitting there, you're putting together the schema of data, you're creating stored procedures, all that kind of stuff. Was it like that, or is it more like I remember I did
a little. I worked with database administrators closely, and I would write. Let's say if I had to write a migration.
Okay.
So let's say if I had to, either load data in or take, say, one data from one table and then, refactor it into another, form of data that I could to pre-populate another table. So I had to create like a database migration. I would work with database administrators to approve that, to basically do like a code review of my migration to make sure it's not going to break anything or destroy the system.
Right.
So I definitely worked with database administrators, and then, I worked at that job for about 4 to 5 years. And so by the end, I could start to do a little bit of database administration tasks myself. But just having a job, it is more like a sort of like business programmer job.
Okay. So are you pulling things into a web application or into like a desktop
it's actually all terminal based.
All terminal based.
Yeah. So the system, I don't know, if anybody's listening to this, or actually if you just go with Tim, if you Google Progress 4GL, that was the programming language that we use. Just think of it as It kind of looked a little bit like Visual Basic. It had the weirdest syntax attribute to this, where you could actually use dashes in the variable names, and it drove me crazy. Coming from a JavaScript background, or coming from any other C-based language background, it drove me crazy. And what I would do, I would hate to do like the dashes, and I would do like underscores, or I would do, when I would do variable
like
or
normal
or method names,
naming,
keeping like the words together, use like some camel casing. So I would do that, and I would get reprimanded by the other developers in the department because I'd be breaking the style of the department, because they would want to use dashes.
They want to use dashes
for variable names and method. I was like, oh my gosh, because that was just it was allowed within the language.
That's crazy.
And so but it drove me crazy. And that's one thing I remember today. Like, I will never go back to that language because that one syntax feature that I'm like, it just
I feel like there may be other reasons you don't go back to that language.
Probably.
Because when you say database programmer, I remember the first job I think I ever got paid for, or did for a client. I don't even know if I got paid for it, but like wrote code for someone else, was just a Visual Basic program, which used an Access database, right? Because Visual Basic came with Access built in, right? And just loaded records and let people put in the scores for students at my church's school. And they would calculate the GPA and kind of give you that report card. Just so it was nothing but a front end around a database. But back then, before we had, like, we have tools now. There's so many SaaS style apps that say, give me your data and I make a form and we'll mine it. You can just build that now with userland tools. But back then it's like, well, no, somebody would need to program some type of very simplistic UI for you to put the data in and then just show it. It was really simple. And was I a DBA? No, but that's what I was doing. I was just shuffling data in and out of a database. And you're doing that, I guess, a similar thing, but you said a terminal interface?
Yeah, it was all so
you just prompt the user with questions.
The users were just, it was just like dummy terminals that they were using.
Gotcha.
I'm dating myself here, but it was sort of like the end of the terminal base, but everybody was running Windows applications, and they would run like a terminal application on Windows to basically bring up the terminal system.
I bet we still see some of that today in point of sale systems, like really old point of sale systems, where you're just launching something that gives you probably access to an AS400.
So I did that for about 2 years, which was cool. I actually wrote it was all on Unix. It wasn't Linux. It was all US. Actually, what was it? HP Unix. So it was all in Unix. That's actually where I learned. Well, in college, I learned Linux. I built my own Linux. I joke around about Slack, where I actually did that. Getting like the CDs, like the Linux format CDs, and before we could actually like download all the files, I would get the CDs, get all the files, build,
burn it,
I'd build the installer and then burn my own CDs to actually install Linux on my computer. So I was doing that in college for fun, but then actually helped me. Then when I got the job, we were on HP Unix. And I could kind of translate. And what I did, what nobody else could do, I actually wrote a file manager on Unix, a terminal-based file manager that actually had, it looked like a graphical application on Unix. So it had like it was basically like a 2 or 3 pane, file manager, where I could have one column could be a list of files or folders, and I could be able to select them and be able to then see files that are being opened up within the same application, which nobody else could do that. But the reason why I wrote that was to write a report viewer application, because one of the things that we did as a department was to write a lot of reports, like to code reports.
Right.
Based on the data, the data in the database. So being able to test or preview or view those reports that are being generated was a feature. What you would do is you usually just open it up in your terminal editor, have to scan through it, or to just print it out. So what I did was I made this file manager that they could just easily just open up the reports within it, can have like a nice kind of almost a GUI. Now couldn't use your mouse cursor at all, but you could basically you could at least see tab around, shortcut around.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. That was actually, they gave me the freedom to do that. And I really appreciate that, because that got into the type of programming that I like to do. And that then led me into, they had an intranet that they were kind of slowly using. Right. I said, I'm interested in webs. I did a lot of web stuff in high school and a little bit in college too. So why don't, could I start to kind of work on their intranet? That led me then working on client websites, because this tax administrator company did, they spun out into an outsourcing company that then they did work for other companies.
Oh, okay.
And so that I could start to do some web work for other companies through the outsourcing company, or the outsourcing department of the company. So that kind of gave me a lot of opportunities then to kind of get into web. Then getting where it got me back into teaching. Okay, so between my first job,
I just want to say for a second too, like your career, and this says something about our industry, right?
Yeah.
You're writing a file manager. That's like one of your first jobs. You're writing a terminal-based file manager, and now you're asking computers to write code for you. Like that.
I know, it's crazy.
That's where we've gone in what is, I don't know. I find that fascinating. So.
Well, that's also one thing. Think about us. Well, I know I'm older than you, Tim. You're not too much younger than I am.
Just a little bit.
But that is one nice thing about being or kind of growing up this time, or I say growing up or aging in this time.
Oh yeah.
Where we saw almost everything. Like we kind of missed like the early 80s, late 70s, when computers, where with the whole Apple, Microsoft, and kind of the back and forth. But then let's say late 80s, I have memories of that. Like you do. Like your first computer was the Apple
IIc Plus. Yeah.
Yep. My first computer was a Tandy or a TSR 80, right?
Right. So, yours was like one home computer generation beyond mine, right?
Yeah. But it's interesting how you could, like you said, it's interesting to see how it's evolved over the past, let's say 30 years. It's crazy. So getting to teaching them, what I was doing while I was between that and then my next job was working once I got into web design, I wanted to kind of get more to the design, the art side. So then I took a job as actually a sort of a UI, UX designer, designing icons and logos, kind of do more of the front end, more of visual interface and doing. Actually, was interesting because that got me into like user testing and to kind of see that side of it. But what I was doing in between my first 2 or 3 jobs, I got a little bit bored. You know me, I like to kind of, change my interest here. So I said, one thing I was doing back in the day was also a lot of Flash work. So doing like web animation and Flash, and also I was getting into animation just as a fun kind of side project. And what I wanted to do to kind of learn about this, why don't I take a course? Why don't I look up what courses are offered and kind of to see what's available, and looked up Northampton Community College, and they were offering a web animation course. They were offering a 3D animation course. So I took those courses just for fun and just to learn. And actually, I used some of the stuff I learned from the Flash class. Actually, I built a web-based ticketing manager within Flash.
There's a technology that you're never going to see go away.
Yeah, you're never going to see going away. ActionScript will be with us, Tim. It'll stay with us in some form.
I heard the other day someone was still debugging Cold Fusion. I'm like, where?
Oh yeah,
how?
I was thinking about Cold Fusion too. Well, that we talked about last week, the HTMX.
Yeah.
Always. My head. When I was thinking about that, and I was like,
feel like Cold Fusion. Oh, okay. All right.
I had a friend who he passed away, but actually he loved Cold Fusion. He was a web developer, and he worked for Crayola. He worked for a couple of companies with just Cold Fusion.
Just Cold Fusion.
He loved it. Yeah, and I never could get into it.
And that was like additional instructions on top of HTML, right?
Yeah,
if I remember correctly. Yeah, and you had to have something on the server to process. It was very much like SSI, I remember the Microsoft front page extensions, all those things. So, all right, so you're taking classes at a community college,
and that got me. And then what I would do, I was pretty. I like to kind of talk to professors and learn from them, and I kind of
okay. So I just want to.
I was taking it at.
Yeah, you're taking classes at a community college.
Yes.
I know community colleges are more oriented around whoever needs this education, right? Like maybe you come back for a second career.
Yep.
But I got to think you're still older, in a slightly different demographic
I was like
than
25, 26, I believe, right?
Okay.
When I was taking that course.
Okay.
I was definitely older than, I'm not as old as what I am now.
Right.
But yeah, I was definitely taking a course a little bit older than the students in the class there. So I was talking to the professors and kind of getting to know them. And I got to know one of the professors really, really well. And a couple years later that he was leaving, he wanted to transition to another university. And he asked me, wait
a second.
Would you care to help take over my position?
Who is this professor?
Ira Greenberg.
Okay. I just didn't know if it's somebody I knew. So now?
No.
Okay. So he's moving to a different class, different university, or did he move to another community college or university?
No, he wanted to work at a 4-year university. And there are some, I never cared about that. That was never a career aspiration of mine, because I honestly, still don't consider myself an academic, even though I've been doing it for 10 years. I don't like the idea of me being an academic and having an academic job.
You like
a
much more like
I like the more real world. Yeah.
Right. Is that, sorry, just the terms are in my mind. I have no idea if I'm using this right. Is that like a professor of practice? Is that a thing or no? Not a thing. Okay.
Might be.
But you're very much more like, I really do this. I'm not just teaching it from the fact that I
Correct.
learned it, but
Correct.
like
Yeah.
I've been in it. I've done this
So
for money in the real world.
and he would acknowledge he's more of an academic, and he loves the academic, research experience. He loves doing his own research and getting published, and that's kind of his thing. So if you're into that, then that's kind of your career kind of path of possibly staying at community college if you want to keep working in that setting, or if you want to transition to a 4-year college, you'll have more opportunities for research and funding and to do some different things in an academic standpoint. So he was transitioned to a 4-year university, and he asked me, would you want to take over my position temporarily? Just because they didn't have time to do a search and find the person. So that led me into basically a 2-year temporary job of teaching college full time.
It was full time.
Yeah.
So you wanted to temporarily teach
for full-time. Like a temporary full-time position. So you're not like a 10-year track position. They know they're just hiring like a 1-year contract. And then if they want to keep you for another year, they'll rehire you for another year. But they usually look at those positions as like temporary positions until they can find somebody, or if they want you to, if they want to hire you full-time for the 10-year track, they could eventually do that. But it's basically just a temporary position until they find a full-time person that they'd want to keep forever.
But in this case, you became that full-time person?
After 2 years, actually, I got not really tired teaching, but I had to make a choice of like, okay, if I'm going to stay teaching, then I'm going to have to go back to grad school. I'm going to have to get the grad degree. I'm going to have to make a career out of it. And that was I was at the point of, figuring out, should I do that? And, I was like, I don't know. It's not really my, so I was okay with leaving, and actually allowed me to actually work for a company in Philadelphia then. Worked for a telecommunications company in Philadelphia, hated the commute, but did it for, I worked for them for about 3 years. The first 2 years I had to go in full time, drive into Philadelphia every day. That was horrible. But then the last year they allowed me to kind of do a little bit more remote. I could come in like maybe 1 or 2 days a week, and then work from home the other days. So that was a nice transition. But also that allowed me some time to think about, okay, well, why not building some client relationships and thinking about different companies I could work for. That allowed me to then get some contract opportunities to then leave working full time and start working for myself. And then that kind of led me meeting you, and doing what we did. So
but you weren't teaching at that time.
No, I was working as a contractor, basically what you're doing, like working.
And then what sucked you back in then?
What brought me back in was really the genie, Tim.
That wasn't the genie. Genie grants 3 wishes, none of which are yours.
Oh, startups, yes. So I wanted to have the experience of working for a startup, and I do look at that experience. That was a really cool experience.
You had an experience there.
And I brought you into that experience at a couple points too.
A couple points, yeah. I remember. So
it was a good experience. I liked it. Looking back at it, yeah. Would I have worked in that startup in the same way? Would I have tried to force myself into trying to be a partner and to try to be so kind of devoted and committed to that startup? I mean, should I have just kept it as a contractor and just did a little bit of work for them? Maybe. It was an interesting project, though. I did a lot of interesting kind of work with it. So, and it was also kind of a good experience to kind of see what it's like to kind of be within a startup and to deal with partners and to deal with, the business side of it and, the pros and cons of that. But what happened, though, that kind of petered out.
Did it?
It did. It petered out randomly. Well, Grubhub pretty much put us out of
Grubhub came,
because we started Mini Genie was a online ordering for a restaurant, just like Grubhub or a lot of services now that do this. But that didn't exist in Lehigh Valley. So the partners saw us an opportunity, even though Grubhub was
already around, right?
In San Francisco, Austin, they were the bigger cities, New York, but they weren't in. So they thought, okay, if we could try to get this off the ground for the first year before Grubhub gets here, then we have an opportunity. Well, we actually got it off the ground.
Did it, yeah.
We got into orders. Yeah, we made money. We got more. The margins were so small. We were doing good in a sense for like.
Was Genie doing deliveries? I don't remember.
No, they weren't doing deliveries. We would work with we were just doing the online ordering system and the payment transaction system. Okay. So we would, have the online menus. We'd also accept payments online. We'd basically handle the transaction. Think about API standpoint. It was great. One of the first great experience to work with APIs, like generating faxes, PDFs for like orders.
Because you'd send faxes to
working with Twilio, working with. Yeah. I was thinking about what is the API that I use for the fax service. You actually
was it Faxio?
It might
but
have
with a
been.
PHAXIO, I think.
Yes, that's what it was.
Hmm.
PH. Yeah. So it
Yeah.
was Faxio. So are they still around? They still
I
doing it?
have no idea. I believe there's a couple services now, maybe even Twilio, that you can do faxes with as well. So
So
it
that
kind of
was great
became
for
a
just working with
commodity.
APIs, and also,
Yeah.
I initially started out working with a Heroku, kind of thinking about
Hmm.
like a
Hmm.
platform as a service. Then also that got me to Amazon Web Services. Now I'm getting back into now. So that kind of got me back into the kind of cloud hosting, cloud development kind of model with kind of working on that startup. So that was a great experience. But since it petered out, had to pay the bills and trying to get back in. Okay, thinking about, do I want to do consulting? Do I want to do contract work? I was doing a little bit of work, kind of, but I was like, I just need something stable. Or for the family,
Right. Right.
it was kind of a rough, let's say, 6 months as it kind of ended, and money got a little bit tight. And another friend of ours was doing this exact same thing at NCC, was leaving for a 4-year university. The cycle came back around, asked me, well, would you be interested in taking over my position? So I was like, all right, fine.
And then you did that again as a temporary?
I did it, but I did with a different mindset of saying, if I'm going to do this, I'm gonna go back to grad school. I'm gonna get my grad degree, and I'm just gonna do it because I feel like I want to go back to teaching. I didn't feel like I was burnt out by programming. I was still into that, but I was burnt out by the business side of it because I felt I got a little bit burned. Finances got really, really super tight, and it was kind of a tough time. And I just wanted stability.
Right.
Just wanted something
Right.
stability. Kind of need to kind of get back into a better place, and so that allowed me to do. And I was always, even though I was going to go back to grad school and I was going to work, for teaching full time, I still only thought I was only going to do it for like, say, 5 years, maybe 5-6 years at the max, and then I would kind of then go back and transition.
Yeah, I
back
kind of
back into
remember.
industry.
Can't remember.
And
those
then I
numbers.
just kind of, because I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. Dealing with some college administration, politics, that's always a thing. I never was much into that, but I always love the process of teaching. Like I said, it's kind of what's the one job besides coding, besides working on a really deep problem and really interesting problem that you really want to try to kind of work through. That and also teaching are two jobs that I could do, and I could just, time just kind of fades away, right? Kind of
Gotcha.
just feels natural, feels easy. Now, when you're dealing with, say, grading student work, or maybe doing some of the prep going into the class,
Tedious parts of
that can
still
be a little bit
tedious.
tedious, but the actual process of actually teaching, whether or not doing it on campus or doing it remotely, like or creating lecture videos, I love that process.
There's something about seeing like someone realize a concept
Yeah.
that's very, very rewarding.
And the one thing I love about community college is I love the fact that it's a 2-year program meant to train people to get a job.
Right. Right.
And that's honestly, I think the best thing about, if somebody's going to go to college and if they want to have a career, I think honestly, just take 1 or 2 years, get your foot in the door by maybe getting a couple classes to get your head wrapped around some concepts and to maybe start to develop your own work, but then get out of college as fast as possible and get into the real world. And I do recommend that to my students all the time, even though they do transfer off to 4-year schools. And I feel for some students that may be the best choice for them too, because maybe they need a little bit more time to develop and they want that time to kind of, they're not ready to go, try to get an entry level job. But the reason why I love the program that I'm in is because it's meant to be a 2-year program to give them those foundational skills that they can then use to get an entry level job.
And you have, what's nice, I feel like has to be nice, is that you have a definition of success, right? Like are our students able to get jobs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We are accomplishing what we're, because if not, your success is like, well, do they understand the concepts? Well, do they pass the test? Does that really tell you if they understood the concepts? Right. I know you have projects at the end, which should convey whether or not to some extent they understood it, but you have a very real definition of success. And it's like, well, did they either transfer to 4-year college or were they able to get a job? Did we give them enough information that they were able to get and sustain a job? So that's got to be rewarding in its own way to have that specificity around what your goals are.
So bringing back where we're at today and what I'm trying
because that was just like, how'd you get into teaching?
Back to the Summer of Mark and why we're talking about this today. And like I said in the beginning, I am scheduled still to teach. I'm giving my reservation. I'm still scheduled to teach in the fall. I reduced set of classes. I'm not teaching 6 classes anymore. I got a little bit burned out by that.
What are the classes you're teaching in the fall?
Let's see.
Allegedly. What are the classes that you're
Teaching like
allegedly teaching?
well, I'm teaching my intro to web, my advanced web course, which I've always
Okay.
taught every semester. Teaching a new user interface design course. So if I am teaching
Ooh.
in this semester, I do actually, because it's going to be strictly no code. It's going to be, getting into
Just
using Figma.
Just UI and UX.
UX UI design, I designed the course. I'm actually kind of looking forward to teaching that.
Nice.
And then also getting back to, because I'm pulling away from the computer science courses, and I don't want to go down that rat hole. And I have vented about that in the past, about dealing with the computer science department and the nature.
Not your department.
It's not my department, so
Not
I
your
have
department.
so limited control of what I can
Yeah.
say and what I can do. I can force my way into some areas, but too much. I don't have too much control of the program. So I've kind of pulled away from those courses. I'm getting back to teaching a computer graphics course, which I haven't taught in 5 years.
Teaching a what course?
A computer graphics course. So where students learn Photoshop, Illustrator,
graphics course. Okay.
basic computer graphics.
Oh, cool.
So if I am there next in the fall semester, I am looking forward to teaching, but I would teach it from more of a design perspective. So
Gotcha.
using Photoshop, Illustrator. I wish I could just use GIMP or Inkscape, but that's not going to be accepted.
No.
But then focusing more on, like, from a design perspective, also getting them into web design earlier, your user interface design earlier, through some of the projects. So I am looking forward to that. But one thing I've always been challenged with, because like I said, I always looked at teaching as not as a transition job or transition career, but just as a way to kind of give me some time to figure out a way to kind of get back in the industry. Because in order to make money, teachers are capped at a certain salary, especially community college professors don't really make that much. And also your yearly raises are not that much. Or if you get promoted, you don't make much more. Right. So from a financial standpoint, you are severely limited. That was a big reason why I always looked at it as sort of a temporary position. And I always wanted to go back in the industry, just because I feel like I could work towards retirement in a little bit more of an efficient way, a little bit a better way for the family and myself. But how do I do that transition? How do I transition out of academia, which I've always felt a challenge with, because when you're teaching, you're committed for that semester, right? You're kind of if you're starting the fall,
right. You can't be like, here's my 2 weeks.
The spring. And like I said, that's still my mindset, right? But what I went into this summer with, saying, okay, if I want to do transition, I want that transition to happen, let's say within the next 6 months to a year. Well, let me start working on that now. So what I was doing last semester was starting to prepare for, what type of work would I want to kind of transition back into, what type of development work would I want to do. So I started to really think hard and long about that. That's also why I asked you to start this podcast, Tim, so I could start to talk through these ideas and start to kind of think about some different things that I was going to.
That's going on like 2 years ago now. But yeah, you're right. Ever since we talked this, we were like, is Mark going to come back? So
it's always been a topic. And then one thing that also kind of pushed me more into that I need to make this change is that my wife's retiring from her. She's been teaching for over 20 years. So she's been teaching longer than I have. She's just, her only career has been teaching at a college, but now she's transitioned herself into writing. She's, published, 10 books. She wants to focus on that full time. She just wants to write and to publish her books. And so if you work over 20 years at the college, they do have an early retirement package that she applied for. She got accepted. And so her last semester is going to be next fall. So at the end of next fall, then she's done.
Next fall or this fall?
This upcoming fall.
Okay.
So she'll be done then going to the next year. So that's giving me a timeline, thinking, okay, we could make it work. Like I said, with the retirement package and with, if I was still working through the school through fall and the spring, would be okay financially. Yeah, we'd be fine. Okay financially. But then say next summer though, that it's going to start getting a little bit tight then again if she's not, depending upon also how well she's selling her books and like that, which she is doing better at. Just a matter of how fast that can, kind of grow and evolve and financially to kind of to fill that what she was making full time.
Right.
So then it gets me back into, what am I going to do this summer? How am I going to transition?
Right. So that was the really long answer of don't worry, coworkers.
Yes.
I haven't said goodbye yet.
Yes.
I'm just looking at opportunities. I'm
also going to do that because I may have to clip multiple parts because I'm going to start being a lot more public about this. Because the nice thing also where I'm the position I'm at the school now, I do have tenure.
Right. So you can do whatever you want, right?
Is that how that works? As hard as I can.
What does tenure mean? Like,
Tenure
what does
means
that really mean?
they can't fire you for anything that you say, in a sense. Now, as long as you follow the employee contract and the faculty
Right,
contract that you
right.
sign up for. So as long as you teach your classes, fulfill your commitments for, like, say, committees or your academic work that you signed up for, as long as you do all the job requirements, they can't fire you. They can't fire. But so because in other universities, because in universities, especially if you don't have tenure, they could not rehire you for the
Right.
because faculty are, let's say, hired on like a year by year contract if you don't have tenure.
Right.
So that's why faculty don't have tenure don't really speak up, don't really say much, don't really stir the waters or cause conflict or bring up issues
And the whole
within
goal is to be
the
able to
academic setting.
have that type of discussion and
Yes,
discourse.
which there's a paradox there. It's
right.
Yeah, it's stupid. But
they could they fire you and be like, hey, we're not going to be teaching these courses anymore?
No, actually, what would happen though? I could actually change to a different department.
You'd have, like, so they have to keep you.
They'd have to keep me in some way. Yeah.
Is it possible for a university then to downsize tenured professors, or no? It's just not.
No, unless you do something severely wrong, which we had a couple of professors since my time. I probably had 2 tenure professors that did get fired, but they did something. They did really bad things.
But I mean, like, even if all of a sudden nobody is applying to or coming to the college, students there's attrition on the students, so it's like we don't even have courses that need to be taught. Still, they can't.
As long as the college is functional and as long as there are courses to teach, I could end up teaching a history
whatever.
Wow. Yeah. So that's the thing. Like I could have a job there, but it's not a job that's going to be, say, within my specific department. They close down the department, like you said, for enrollment issues.
Yeah.
Nobody's taking web design classes anymore, and they want to shut those all computer graphics classes. They want to shut all those down. Then I could just move to a different department. There would be a process,
which is fine, because according to your Twitter profile, you are what is it? Amateur historian? Is that
Batman historian?
Batman historian. So you could do all of that history.
I could.
You could be like,
growing up, I actually really love history. Actually, I could see myself doing that. I probably would definitely get bored about teaching it because nothing would change. It's history.
But would you really get bored teaching Batman history?
Probably not.
I feel like that might be fine, right? So, all right. So now that we've covered the fact that you're not actually leaving, but you're thinking about leaving, and you are saying it more publicly because you can, because what in the world? They can't fire you anyway, so you might as well say what you want.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
What's your plan? We've got almost no time to talk about that now. I love that we teased it.
I love
it.
This could just be part 1 of the summer mark.
Part 1 of the summer mark. All right. So
next week?
But before we get to your plan, I can't get past your LinkedIn profile. The fact that you've got text in header, but we both share a mutual connection on LinkedIn. You remember Josiah? I don't know, Josiah. If you're listening, if you're out there,
is he popping up in your LinkedIn feed?
It was fun. Well, if you look at the people, like when I go to your page, it shows me the names of people that we share connections with, and he has used Unicode letters to make his look different than everyone else's. I think that's the next step you need to take, because he's got his name on LinkedIn is Code Poet, which as soon as I saw that, I was like, well, I know who this is. and when I'm viewing your page, it shows that we have him in common, right? Yep. But his stands out because it's like all bold Unicode letters. So I really think you need to work on that. I think we need some Unicode in your LinkedIn name.
I did think about putting some emoji icons in there.
Oh, we could do emoji,
like a rocket ship. I don't know.
I think rockets are good.
Rocket ships.
I feel like rockets are good.
Yeah.
What are you? Solutions architect and educator. Maybe a professor. Maybe a rocket professor.
Oh,
like those two together.
Like a graduation cap and
I think
rocket.
So. Yeah. Yep. I like that.
Maybe some books. I don't know.
You're a full stack web developer, so some pancakes. Rocket professor, stack of pancakes. I think you put those after your name in LinkedIn. I believe everybody will be. You'll be beating the recruiters.
If I don't get any calls by the end of the summer, then maybe try some crazy things. Okay, so let's say for the last 15 minutes here, let me kind of give you my rough overview. I'm going to get into more details about this next week, because I want to kind of get your feedback of my plan going into the summer and how it's going to be. Because Next week is actually the start of, let's say it's gonna be June 5th, which that was in my mind. That's where I put in my calendar. This is the date I was going to start sending out applications. So
you're sending out applications.
So my general plan, because I need to kind of get back into this process of interviewing, talking to companies, talking about myself, even though I like talking about myself, but talking about it more of a professional way. And instead of just talking with you or students. And I need to kind of get some experience with that. My plan was, okay, let's say the first month of this process, why don't I just look at local companies in the Lehigh Valley, maybe even companies that I have some connection with, some experience with, and see what kind of position they're hiring. Now, they may not be the ideal positions that I want to take.
Right.
Also, I guarantee looking at different positions to be offered Lehigh Valley income-wise, it's not going to be the salary that I'm going to be looking for. And maybe not. I don't know. But just from our experience, I think we both have a lot of experience.
I would guess no.
Yeah, we both have a lot of experience working with companies around the Lehigh Valley. Once you start to get close to Philadelphia,
well, that's actually
New York, it starts to go.
You're asking for my feedback in this, and I'm not probably going to be able to give a lot of that because I don't have a lot of experience working for companies in the Lehigh Valley. I see people working. I know of companies in Lehigh Valley, right?
When it comes back to Lehigh Valley Tech Days, we did work with a lot of companies. We interacted with a lot of companies.
Interact with them, yes. Yeah. But I don't know that I have ever tried to get a job with a local company. I have seen them for years. When I was doing the contracting thing on my own, my dad would come by, and he had circled in the papers the job postings, because it's like I remember that this consulting thing. Whatever I don't know what he's doing, but I don't know where he's working. But maybe he should think about working in one of these companies. And I'd look at him, but it'd be like, no, none of those they're not interesting because they're not paying close to what I would be looking for, right? Because I remember seeing for me, we interacted with some web hosting companies locally in Reading, and I kind of knew what they were hiring for when they were hiring. And I'm like, that's not competitive.
Yeah.
For what I'm looking for, right? So I'll be really interested. So this is the week you're going to start, or next week. Sorry, next week you're going to start looking for what's out there.
So that was my plan. Is let's look locally the first month. Let me just send out a bunch of applications. We look primarily just staying inside Lehigh Valley, maybe close to Philadelphia. The idea of
Philly,
unless Philly was a remote job, I don't know.
No. Who wants to try to? I'm sorry, Philly.
But there are a good number of opportunities in Philadelphia too, that I've been seeing. So I don't know. It's something I'm probably going to also apply to some companies. Actually, I did talk to a recruiter last week that was from Philly.
Talk to a recruiter
out of Conshohocken. And he picked me up on LinkedIn, and it was it was just talking to that recruiter. I realized some things I probably should not say to recruiters, because he asked me back, "Oh, your past experience. I saw you worked in Philadelphia." Yeah, I worked in Philadelphia. We chat about that. And I started to complain about the commute. I started to really vent about some of this stuff. Because I would do that normally with with other people. But probably I got to maybe watch what I say when I talk to you.
I don't know. I'd been about the commute because you don't want the commute. don't give me a job with a commute.
I know. All right, so that was gonna be my first one. Just get kind of some experience interviewing, talking to people again, and kind of get that under the belt, because I feel like I kind of need to kind of work through a little bit of the rough edges there. The second month, then in July, then was going to start applying to more remote jobs. So jobs that are, available all over the United States, that are advertised as remote jobs specifically.
And are you looking at this application process in terms of you think you may find the job, or you just want to exercise these muscles?
The first month was really just exercise.
Okay.
We're on it because honestly, I don't expect to see.
I mean, maybe you run into the perfect.
Yeah, who knows?
Maybe. But just get back and used to talking to people.
Correct. That was kind of the first month to kind of get those first few interviews under my belt, kind of, even if it doesn't lead to anything, let's say because either I'm not the right fit, or if that just financially more than likely is not going to be the right fit for me. So just to get that experience out there, then start during the second month, then start looking at bigger opportunities, but are more remote, that aren't based in Pennsylvania, to kind of branch out and to kind of look at actually more companies that actually I would be more interested to work for, and also that would definitely be paying more. The third, then to kind of do that as a final, because I do have, let's say, then in August, I have to make a choice of okay, so if something's going to happen or not going to happen, and say I'm going to go back to teaching then in the fall. But my last thing, which I don't really want to talk about the locations right now. My
Okay.
wife and I have agreed on a couple of the states
Oh.
because she is open to moving. That was the other thing too. Until she was ready to retire, she was not
Now
about
I don't
moving.
wanna delve too much into the personal side of things. Are you talking about moving though? Because I know are you waiting for kids to get out of high school first
Well,
or
my oldest is graduating this year.
okay.
So we definitely wanted to stay in the area for that. That was
Yeah.
also a big reason of teaching too. I wanted, we want to stay in this area for her, while our kids. My youngest is going to go into 10th grade. She's a little bit more flexible, a little bit more open,
Okay.
and we talked to her too about possibility of moving. And because her junior high into high school, she had a little bit of rough time with that. So she has some some friends, but definitely not as many friends as my oldest, who spent her whole high school career in
With the
one
same people.
place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so she's graduating. She's moving on. She's actually going to go to Northampton for the nursing program.
Oh, really?
Take advantage of the free education.
I'm just gonna wait. Free education? Do you? Oh, is it a?
Yeah, our kids who, well, either the one nice perk, either because I'm working here full time, or let's say if I would leave and my wife's officially retiring, our kids could go back, or we could even go back to take classes there for free for the rest of our lives.
Oh, that's an interesting. Wow, that's quite a
So,
perk, really.
so the one nice thing about Northampton, they have a few professional programs. One of them is nursing, and they have a really, really good 2-year nursing program that she could get certified, and then she could start working, in a hospital setting, just after 2 years. Now it is a pretty intensive program, and we're
So
trying
two years is LPN.
probably, yeah. It's not. I don't know. I don't know the actual certification level of that. I know that, but what her plan is, she wants to do the 2 years and then have the option of then, if she to get that for you, because what she's also been
Oh
hearing
yeah.
from
Oh
people
no.
in the industry that you
100%.
yeah.
Like you need a BSN, bachelor's
So what
science
she's
in nursing.
so what she's hoping to do is to get a job then and have
Yeah.
maybe the job pay for the education. So
Yeah.
that's what she's going to try to do.
I have no idea who set off my dog, but somebody did.
So she's pretty much set. I think we're happy where she's at. But my wife and I, we talked about different states that we might want to really could. We talked about where we'd like to retire. Kind of maybe to buy a new house in. So and it's still possible. It could still just stay in Pennsylvania too. I don't know. We'll see. So there's a couple of states of that last kind of say August, the past 2 or 3 weeks, to do some looking at some places that might be outside the US. But that could also happen in July too, when I'm starting setting out applications. I might start to see. But my plan was to try to set myself up throughout the summer to try to apply to the right companies at the right time. Even though as I've been talking to people, especially, this is a rough economy. There's a lot of, especially in the tech industry, a lot of people got laid off, and it not. And I was talking to the recruiter last week about, if I would have been looking 2 years ago, and would have been having throwing money at me, especially based on my experience. But now, yeah, it's definitely it's rough, right? So I don't even know, because of the economy and the way that the job market is, and also how you're competing with so many people who have been laid off. If it's something, the right opportunity is going to present itself over the next, let's say, 2 to 3 months. But what I want to do is to kind of set myself up in a way, if I can, to see those opportunities and to be ready for them when they happen. Because, like, I've been thinking about this over the past 2 to 3 months and trying to prepare for this. So I think then going to the summer, then making sure that you have as many opportunities as you can.
So like the plan is 1 month local, next month apply to some of the more remote jobs. And then the last month, you didn't want to go into too much details, but then it's you accept the offer from either Apple or Facebook or Google.
Yeah.
Is that
Well, that would be
about
more
it?
Well, if I would do that, that probably would be a remote job. That would be an opportunity. Which honestly, I'm thinking about, that would actually, that would also be
Netflix. Would you do a job from Netflix? I mean, they're in that FANG group, right?
Yeah, maybe.
And any one of those? Any one of those? All right.
So, like I said, I don't want to. Maybe later in the summer. I will talk to you about, especially if I get feedback or or have experiences with different companies. I'll definitely talk about them.
Oh,
with you.
this is gonna be
fun.
Yeah.
So I'll definitely give you a play-by-play once I get to that point. But I don't want to talk about the companies I'm really, really, really want, because I don't want to not say jinx it, but I don't want to, really kind of working through those things. But yeah, just kind of think about, one of the feedback I was getting as I've been talking to people, because it is a rough job market, is I should start applying to every place now.
Oh,
like,
really?
Don't wait.
Don't wait.
Right? Don't wait. Just apply now. If you see a job offer that you don't even feel like you're 100% qualified for, but you feel like you can be, but just apply for now. Right. And I was like, I don't know. That's kind of, I'm a little, I guess I'm just approaching a little bit more of a careful way because also I don't
You don't
have
want to
the
get the no early though, right? Like you
true,
want to
true.
you want to build up a little bit more of that. It's not muscle memory, but like it, just getting used to that process again before you go for the ones that you really want. It would,
Correct. Correct. Yeah.
at least that makes sense to me.
That's my mindset too. Because I would definitely want to kind of work through those rough edges before I'm able to kind
Yeah.
of really kind of push into really make a lot of effort into some opportunities that I feel that I really, really, really want. But it's interesting kind of seeing people's different feedback, and I think maybe it's because of the market is so rough because people are just sending out hundreds of applications, only getting maybe a 10% response rate, and then maybe getting 2 or 3 interviews, out of that, and so it is a super, super rough time and we'll see how the summer goes with the tech job market and see where if it gets better. I'm hoping it'll get better by the end of summer. I don't know. We'll see. But like I said, the other thing too, I am fortunate where I don't, the pressure isn't like,
You don't have the pressure.
there is
because
like there's a
school to
pressure
go
of,
back
let's
to.
say 6 months to a year. Like I was talking about at the beginning with my wife's
Yeah.
retirement and my family. And so there is that. And that's why I'm trying to work on this now. I was talking to my colleague at school about this because I've been honest with him. Jason Zully, you know him.
Jason, yes, I
Yeah.
know Jason.
So he knows all that what I've been doing, and I was talking about it because I told him like, yeah, I don't want to wait till let's say next summer. Like I could wait till next summer. I could wait till next spring and start looking out. But then it's like it's gonna be too late, right? I don't want to wait too long and to start this process because nothing may come out this summer, and then I need to then continue working through this going into then let's say the next fall through the spring, and
Right.
to be able to see if what can happen.
And yeah, I need to say, like, Jason, you need to talk to Mark about your LinkedIn profile. I mean, there's a lot that can be improved here.
Oh, he does not like LinkedIn.
No header. Like,
no, he gets annoyed because on LinkedIn when they ask you to like recommend or to like or to what's that? Not to recommend somebody,
like endorse somebody
endorse
for some
somebody, yes.
skill or something like that.
He hates getting those requests to endorse people because with students we get those all the time.
Oh,
and
I can't imagine how frustrating that is. I went in the other day. I wanted to see if I could add a skill to you, and it wouldn't let me. I think they probably took that away.
I think I maxed out my skills. I think I did.
Is that what it is? Because there was something I was going to put on there. Obviously, it was not real, but but LinkedIn wouldn't let me.
You're just going to make up something.
Yeah, I forget what it was. It is something we talked about in the podcast. I'm like, I should probably tell LinkedIn that Mark's good at this.
Yeah.
But no, it wouldn't let me do that. So yeah, look at like for feedback on this process. I'm a terrible person. I feel like because I don't know that I ever interviewed for a job. That's what's weird. Like
you got most of your opportunities by working with people, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, I started out. I had a job at a web development company. Went out of business. Then I said, well, I'll just start this contracting thing and worked on job sites. So in that way, yes, I interviewed all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like all the time, it's like I can do this contract project for you, and this is why I can do it. And I built up that into the point that I wanted to go to conferences. I talked about this a little bit in my keynote, which by the way, phptech.tv, I think the keynote is up there. If not, it will not be behind a paywall once they get it all edited. So you can watch it there. So I talked a little bit about there, but I wanted to go to conferences and I said, well, I think it's similar to you, right? And we've got a minute left, right? And we'll come back to some of this. But I grew up in church. I spoke, as a teenager, going through my youth group and things like that. So I felt very comfortable. And as I saw people speaking at tech conferences, I'm like, I can do this. I mean, and even now, I teach the adult Sunday school class at church. So that teaching concept is and communication of ideas. I'm comfortable with that, right? So when it came to tech stuff, can I speak at a conference? Sure, I can. I think I can do that. I want to be able to go to conferences. Oh, they're more than I can afford. Well, then let me see if I can convince this company that they needed developer relations. But they came to me first. They were already a client. I'm like, hey, Nexmo, I think you need somebody to do DevRel, and I could do that for you. And then from there, next gig was a client that I had. Next gig was a friend that I knew they were looking for work. And so I've never really had to go through a recruiter and say, look for this job for me. So I can't comment on that. Oh yeah, I know that process works. I can say that the process makes sense to me. And I am really curious to know how well, what do I want to say? Like the companies that you talk to locally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do they want you in the office?
That'll be interesting. Yeah. I'm not sure.
Because if not, then then you're if you want people remote too, you're competing with the global market, and you can't
Yeah.
just consider that, oh, this pay scale is right for where I live. I mean, it's a different thing. I've always worked remote. So
Yeah.
for me, like, what's the going rate in this area? Never mattered. So I'm in it for Summer of Mark. Let's do this. All righty.
All right.
There we go. That's a
So
show
next
right
week, So next week, what we can talk about and continue on this, we could say,
there.
okay, so what really is a solution architect?
Oh, we could do that because I have no idea what a solution architect.
Which could that and why I ended up with going back and forth with between the full stack developer role and the solution architect, and where my mind is around that. So
I was gonna say, how many conversations with ChatGPT did it take to get the solutions architect?
No, that came about because I'm actually working on some AWS certifications.
I could say, like, solution architect to me, the first time I ever heard that title was AWS.
So what I'm working on too is to kind of help me with this transition because like I said, I have my project's mostly academic based. So try to, and I am working on some personal projects, but also feel like, okay, I'm going to help me with this transition to also work with some certifications because I have the time for it this summer. It's not that expensive. So I'm working on picking up some AWS certifications, and the one is a solution architect. So I kind of looked into that. I was like, so what is that? And like I said, I don't want to talk about it now because we could talk about this next week. Well, but it actually goes back to actually something I actually really wanted to do, and actually what got me into what my sister did, because she also helped. She was a programmer, she was a consultant, and saw the work that she did with different companies. And then I kind of got me back to, oh, this is actually maybe what I should be doing instead of calling myself a full stack developer, which I am, and that's what I love. But at the same time, though, also going back to talking to people and working with people in consulting. That's kind of also what I want to do. And I think I could leverage my academic experience in that type of role. So we could talk about that more next week. Also, something we learned about too, I wanted to ask you about.
What?
Data lakes, Tim.
Data lakes. Okay. We can talk about data lakes.
Do you swim in the data lakes?
I don't swim in the data lakes.
Okay. So we could talk about that.
I know what they are, kind of fuzzy,
Yeah.
but I'm not, I don't think this will spoil it for next week, but like, I think it was AWS the first time I saw someone with the title of solutions architect.
Yeah.
Because they have those people like, oh, you have a problem, I'll tell you how to use AWS to solve it, right? And we have solutions architects at PhoneBurner, and it's the same thing. You come and you say, here's our process.
Are they internal? They're internal, like your company?
There are our solution architect that work with our customers, because our customers are like,
let me
tell you how we're, like what our sales process is like, or what our customer relationship process is like. And we say, oh yeah, you don't know that we have this feature, but we do. And let me show you how to use that. And I know people that do similar things as what you're describing. And here's how PhoneBurner makes that work well. So we have solutions architects that come to work with our customers, which is very much the AWS model, right? AWS is solutions architect. If you're spending enough money, or you seem to have the potential for that, they will come and show you how to use AWS stuff to solve your problem.
Yeah. Now, do your architects we stop talking about this?
We'll come back. We'll talk about it.
I'm just curious. Do they do any implementation? They just do kind of like the front end, kind of introductory.
No. Our solutions architect have nothing to do with code.
Okay.
They have everything to do with how you use our application.
And that's something that I think, as I've been learning about this role and kind of thinking back to it, I'd like the idea of a solution architect being that kind of the front person, the front consultant to kind of work with a company.
And to be clear, they don't usually ask us to do anything either. It is just showing a customer how to configure our software in a way that works
they
for
do
them.
It then. They work
they
it themselves.
They do the work, but it very rarely is it anything that involves custom dev work or anything like that.
Do they do like any demos or like kind of like mock-ups or anything like that?
Not a custom dev work, but just like, let me show you my account and how this sales cycle works.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it would be very similar if you looked at something like Salesforce. I'm almost 100% sure if somebody has solutions architect at Salesforce, that Salesforce having its own language that you write custom stuff in is it's a different thing. But a solution architect may come along and say, oh no, use these fields for your contacts, which are just fields that you create. Use this, do that, and then your process will flow a lot better. And no custom dev work at all. It's just like it's a complex piece of software, and you have complex problems. Let's us help you figure out how to use this. So that's a non-dev related one, but so title for episode 61. What is a solution architect? I don't know.
Or swimming with the architects.
Swimming in the Swimming with the architects. So we need to talk about data lakes too.
Well, maybe we get to I want to talk to you about data lakes. I actually think it's a really interesting topic because we
right.
talked about data. I love databases. I love data. And
Yeah,
so I'm getting
yeah.
into this the data lakes concept, which is kind of interesting, and so the schema on read instead of the writing for the schema. So yeah, I think it's kind of interesting.
Throw it all in there and then just slurp it out or something. Get a big straw. I don't know.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, I'm going to end the stream for those of you who stuck with us this long and know what next show might be about.